Hey there, how's it going? So here's a question for you. Have you ever thought like you wanted to move abroad, but you also wondered like, yeah, but is it really like what's it really like? And the last thing you want to do is sell all your stuff because that's what all the people will tell you. Sell all your stuff, sell your house, just leave. Last thing you want to do is just like jump into it and then find yourself like you all of a sudden have to move back home. So I'm here to kind of give you some tips that will make your move abroad journey successful. This is Eventually Elle, and here we do things. We talk about France, we talk about moving abroad, we talk about travel over 50, and language learning. So if those things are interesting to you, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get started. So there was this couple that was in CNN Travel recently, and they were an older couple, and they moved to France for a year, and they found out that after a year, they're like, I think their quote was, it was more grief than joy. And so let's get into it. So, what do you think happened? Some of the things that they cited, some of the reasons why they decided to move back to the US, is they found the food quality poor. They found that it was hard to get an apartment. They found that it was hard to find a doctor. They found that they didn't have any friends. They didn't speak French. So, the I'm like on all these different kind of expat boards and whatnot, and everybody is just raking them through the coals. Like, who did they think they were? Why didn't they like speak French? So on and so forth. And you could say a lot of that, but some of the stuff they had, some of the things they said were true to an extent. Because here's the thing, like moving up, like just traveling and moving somewhere is totally different. And they had traveled a lot. They had been like a few months in, I think, in London, and they'd spent a lot of time in France. So this was not their first rodeo. And I just have to say from personal experience, like I get it. Like I have traveled a lot in France, and I've done it a lot, spent like 3 months in different towns and whatnot. So I was pretty familiar, but this time is different. Like this time, I find like when you're traveling, it's sort of a one-way relationship. So you are either you're like in your Airbnb, or you're in your hotel, or you're spending money at a restaurant, something like that. And so in that respect, it's a one-way relationship, and the people who you are engaging with are generally happy because you're spending money. When you move abroad, it changes. All of a sudden, you need things. So all of a sudden, you are in a position where you're asking for help. So, for example, like I had to get phone service, and they're speaking to me in French, and their English was not great, and my French is not great, and so all of a sudden, I'm struggling. You need, if you want to get like phone service or electricity service or find an apartment, there's all these rules, and all of a sudden, you're hit with you need help. You repeatedly, after it sort of built up, like you're always asking for help, and you start to feel kind of dumb. Like, seriously, you always need help, and you're like a child. You just cannot navigate to the same high level that you could in your own country. So if you're not super comfortable with being, having a beginner's mindset, a child's mind, where you just don't know the basics so often, moving abroad is probably not for you, because you're going to be humbled, you're going to feel dumb, you're going to not know the basics, and people are going to sometimes get frustrated. I'd say, for example, the French are classic for like huffing and puffing and being irritated. And so if you're not comfortable with that, you're going to experience some hardship. So I certainly understand some of the frustration they felt, but let's get into some of the things that you can do so that you do not find yourself after 2 months, 3 months, a year, going back to the States and being like, oh, damn, it was more grief than joy, because we don't want that for you. We want you to be successful. So I have a couple of things. Actually, I have three things that I want to discuss today, in addition to a question that you should ask yourself. So the first question, which I'm sure they ask themselves, but it's something that you kind of have to have really front of your mind. Like you have to be thinking like, why do I want to do this? And believe me, I have had to ask myself that many times, because when you experience hardship, you will find out like, why did I decide to do this again? I think with that couple, I think their life in the States was actually easier. So their why wasn't, it was like, well, like, hey, we had a great life. Let's go. So I'm not saying you have to have a bad life where you come from, but I think that, for example, in this political climate where we are in now, I believe people are scrambling there. I see so much. They're like, just like, get me out. I will go anywhere. That in itself, I'd say you might be setting yourself up for some real struggles. but really be, think about the why. And so here's some examples. Like some people, they want a more affordable lifestyle. Some people want a better quality of life. Some people move abroad because they want adventure, or they're looking for, who knows, they're looking for love. So, these are some of the better quality, food quality, better health care. These are some of the things that people talk about. For me personally, I was, a woman of a certain age, empty nester, and I was kind of, I guess, in that period between my parents are great and my kids are great, and there was a window of opportunity. And so I was like, let me take it now, because there may come a time where I'm going to be needed more by my family. And so right now I have this chance to do this thing that I've wanted. And I have always loved the language. And so, France for me was like a no-brainer. But I know other people are like, well, I don't know where my country is. Maybe it's Mexico. Maybe it's South America. Maybe it's, Thailand. I don't know. So that's a different question. But for me, I'd always been captivated by the language. I had a lot of early experiences kind of in France and with French culture. So that was an easy no-brainer. Finding the city, that's something that's still I'm still on the search for. So, that's another question. But just know your why. Like, why do you want to do this? And then you have to plan. So how do you plan? So here's 3 things that I think are really super important. So the first thing is you got to do your research. And thankfully now we have so many resources available to us. I mean, first of all, I haven't tried this, but I'm sure if you put into ChatGPT a prompt like, give me the best places that have X, Y, and Z, affordability, best work-life balance, what I'm sure will give you a whole list of things. But so ChatGPT and what I call YouTube University. There's so much great content on YouTube. You can see people who are living a journey, and again, you have to realize that social media is what it is. Hopefully I'm trying to give you the real story. But there's a guy called Nathaniel Drew. He's on YouTube. I really enjoyed watching his videos of Paris. He's recently moved to outside of Paris, but his parents also moved to France, and I really liked their journey. The mom, I think her channel might be called like An Artist's Life, something like that, and she's refurbished a home that they purchased. His dad is called like Beneath the Surface. I will link all of those videos below, as well as the article about the couple. So just so you can read that. So if you haven't read it, then you can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, definitely go on YouTube and see if there's somebody that, something that you connect with. I think that's a great resource. Facebook is another great one. There are so many, and I found it so helpful. There's so many great forums for visas, French visas. There's a wonderful group. There's 2 or 3 of those actually on Facebook, and they will answer questions, and they've got guides, and you can continue to read all about the different visas and which one's appropriate for you. There's also all of these groups if you're thinking of a specific city. Like, for example, there's Americans in Paris, there's the Women in Paris, there's the Americans in Nice. You just scroll through, in any city that you're thinking of living in, I'm sure there's a Facebook group, and you can listen to the expats who are there, and you can, ask questions, whatever. I know they're a great resource. What else? Facebook groups, YouTube. Exodus Summit. So there's a really fantastic group. They're called Exodus Summit. You can Google them. They have a Facebook group. They also have a web page. And it's run by 2 Black women, Rashida Dow and Stephanie Perry. And they really are all about helping Black women leave the U.S. And so they do a summit every year. It's an online conference, and they just kind of break down all the tools that you will need. This year they focus a lot on language learning, which I love, but they will talk to you about how to get your money straight. They will talk to you about how to find a remote job, all of these resources. So Exodus Summit. There's another group called Blaxit, Blaxit, which is all about how to leave the U.S. if you're a Black person. So just some resources that are out there. Highly recommend. And then, what you can also do is if you want to get kind of some benchmarks on affordability, start looking for how much are apartments in whatever the cities that you may be interested in. Start looking at healthcare. How much is healthcare? In France, for example, after 3 months and you have a visa, you are then open, what's the word? You can then apply for the French healthcare system. So, and then that, I guess, makes it more affordable. I haven't reached that point yet, but I'll let you know when I do. So that's another great resource. Okay, so number one, research the culture, research visa requirements, research the cost of living. That's all stuff that you can do in the luxury of your own home. So you don't have to go anywhere. And because of the time that we live in, it's all out there for you. The next thing, and I cannot say this more because this is my own personal passion, but get into the language. Again, what those Americans did is they didn't speak the language and then they wondered why they didn't have any friends. Well, you know, you can't expect people to speak English to you. Some places you can, probably in Paris, you probably can live in like an expat bubble and probably speak English. But, you know, you don't really want to be that person. You want to be the person who can at least like come and say hello, goodbye, how are you, whatever. So, you know, I'd say if you're a beginner, Duolingo. Duolingo is great. Pimsleur, I met a guy and he could speak really great French because he used Pimsleur. And I know, I'm guessing that Pimsleur is in lots of languages. I just happen to know this guy spoke really great French with that. I'd also say Netflix, start getting into the TV shows, watch all the French language shows. Call My Agent, Lupin, what else? Oh, the French, what's it called? The French Agency. Highly recommend the three of them. Spotify, start listening to French music online. Aya Nakamura is my new favorite, but there's so many choices. And what else? Oh, and then tutors, private tutors. Check out italki, check out Preply. You can get a French tutor for probably as little as $10 for an hour. So really just get into the language. And the thing about the language is that it's like an opening. It's an opening into the way that people think. So here's an example. The French culture is, they call it la politesse. And politeness is just embedded in the culture. So, for example, when you say you, there's like tu, which is like for like among friends, and then there's vous, which is for someone older or somebody more respected or whatever. So you may say like vous to like, you know, your grandmother, or maybe to like when you walk into a store and you're talking to the person who owns the store or whatever. So that's a vous. And then tu is all your, you know, your friends. So when I was a kid, I learned it this way. But again, I was a kid and I thought, well, you know, I don't know when I get there if it's going to be that way. So I'm still kind of like trying to figure out who's a tu and who's a vous, but the politesse. So the other day I went to the train station. I was late for my train and I was trying to figure out which track it was going to arrive on. So I went scrambling over to a guy. He was dressed in, you know, whatever, like, you know, a suit, like he worked at the train station. And I said, oh, hi, you know, which track is, you know, the train coming in from? Or which track is the train happening? And he was like, and he corrected me. He said, bonjour, madame. And I said, oh, bonjour. And he's like, bonjour, madame. Ça va? In other words, he slowed my roll and he was like, yeah, we don't just start off with asking questions. First, we do our salutations. We say, hello, how are you? And so it was a really good reminder, which is that like politeness matters, that it doesn't, you know, it took 2 seconds. And so I say that, which is like, that's part of that tu and the vous thing, is like politeness is embedded in the language. And the French are very proud of their language. And it really means a lot to them if you try to learn some of it. So highly recommend, and I gave you some wonderful resources, and there are so many, and if you ask me questions I can give you 1,000 more because anyway, I'm going to talk more about language later, so hold that thought. So let's say you have you know your why, you've done your research, you kind of have like a baseline, like, okay, it's going to cost me this much to live there, and I know like the basics of the visas, and I've kind of started to dabble in the whole language world, and I can say a little this and I can say that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go on a scouting trip. Okay, cannot recommend this more, because as we said, it's so much different traveling versus living there, and you're going to go with a real idea, and you're really going to experience like, could I live here? So that doesn't just mean that you're just going to sit back and go to cafes and stay in a hotel. No, you're going to do things like you're going to go to the supermarkets. You're going to go to the what do they call it? Farmers markets. You're going to try to really engage with people. And one thing I love to do is I like to take like a language class, and they have them everywhere. You can take them for a week. Alliance Française is an amazing program. They're in Paris. They're probably in every major city in France. as well as smaller language schools. And it's a great way to meet expats who live there because most of them are taking language classes because they live there. And yeah, and it's just another way to kind of become embedded in the culture. So a scouting trip, I'd recommend, think ahead, like, are you a person who likes warm weather? So if you're thinking France, maybe you're in the Côte d'Azur, you're in that region, you're in Nice, and you're in Antibes or something like that, Saint-Tropez. Maybe you like the mountains, and so, or you can be up by the German border. If you like city life, maybe you're into Paris or Marseille or Lyon. So really just think a lot about what it is that you like, what draws you to an area, and then when you go on your scouting trip, make sure you go to those places and you really take some time to imagine yourself as a person who lives there. And hopefully if you've been on some of these Facebook groups or whatnot, maybe you've struck up a friendship and invite an expat out and say, hey, I'd love to take you out for a cup of coffee, for a drink, whatever. I'd love to talk with you. I'm thinking about moving to the area. A lot of times they will have, I know in Nice, for example, they have like a monthly, I guess, like an expat group where they get together. And often there also are language exchanges in France. So I highly recommend all of that. And if you have any questions for me, let me know. But those are my tips for how to make your journey a successful one. So best of luck to you, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, thanks so much.